When you're driving, you're talking about, thinking about how much you can drink and how much you can gamble and how much you can smoke and how many women you can get and what all this stuff that you want to be bold for. I challenge you to go be bold for Christ, because some of us are the best soldiers for it, man. Not every angel wears a white hat.
Let's go!
Chris and Chris, what's up, boys?
Hey, Chris Crow.
Chris Squared.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris. Love what you're doing with the show.
I freaking love the
Stuff's
show.
awesome.
God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine!
This is the all-new Brackett Show. Brackett Show. And now, here's Chris Brackett.
You got a new intro on me. You added some stuff to it.
I did. Well, we got so many people calling and saying fun stuff. You got to make it part of the show.
We're on the dark side of the moon, and you got Christmas coming up, and then the end of the year, and food plots are hot and heavy. I'm drawing me a little bobcat right here. I've been seeing those bobcats everywhere, man. I got some cool trail camera pictures of them. I don't really have a trail camera sponsor company or anything like that, but I've been trying out a bunch of different cameras. I like the video feature, so I can either click and get a picture, or I can request a video, and then I got all my videos. And I don't know, dude. There's something about getting a trail camera and then getting the video and then be able to watch it. A little more personable than just a 2D picture. You got kind of a movie, and you kind of put them all together, and you get them, rubbing on the branch and scraping and rubbing and chasing. You can kind of tell more from the videos what's going on rather than just, a picture taken.
Yeah, that's a good pose, though.
Deer in the headlights.
Yeah. Literally. Well, I guess not literally.
Well,
no
you
headlights.
get some AR, you get some IR, infrared. They call it infrared.
Sure.
That's what's lighting it up, black and white. And then they got some no glows and some glows, and good Christmas gifts. Any wives out there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're very close to Christmas.
Yeah, you could go like Tacticam route. You go Spartan route. You can go stealth cam route. There's so many cell cameras. Cell cameras have changed the game when it comes to, I think, all critters. I think they're overlooked when it comes to turkey hunting. Like you can really pattern some turkey birds and know where they're feeding and how they're coming off the roost and what time they're coming through an area. They're probably more patternable than deer because they're not nocturnal. If turkeys could smell, you'd never kill one. For sure. Because they got the best eyesight and everything. So this is episode 23, Whitetails, Land, and Life. Do you have a lot of questions for me? Because I'm on the dark side of the moon. I'm hoping by the time we launch this bad boy, I've got a big fat one on the ground, and Jody's got the only one with tags left. But if not, I'll probably be just getting ready for Christmas, maybe.
Yeah.
And hunting evenings, still out of a blind. But I want this to be very question heavy.
Yeah. Well, a few things to note about this. Like you said, we'll have answer questions as well. We had someone who had been listening to the show, which we appreciate everyone who's listening and watching, and heard us talking about a pie, me specifically talking about the Elegant Farmer and their brown bag pie, which we have one that's in the oven right now.
And then Brian Newman sent it to us.
Brian, thank you, Brian.
Yeah, you made Chris's day. I'm excited. I haven't met a pie I didn't like, but he's really excited. But that's because he's had it before.
I have had it. It's delicious, but besides that, it's just nice that someone sent us something. But I say that because it's literally in the oven, and at some point soon, in the next few minutes, I'm going to have to leave the studio to go grab the pie, and
We're
then
going to do a taste test on air.
Yes, it's going to be great. So
my wife probably smells the pie that she brought us from across town.
Yeah, she's going
to join.
Yeah,
for sure.
Awesome. So we got that. Also, we're going to be answering those calls, which is 309-761-LAND, 309-761-5263.
Call in. It's free.
Yes.
Call in, ask a question. You guys are thinking about what to prepare for next season. Like what to prepare for next season. Do I buy a different piece of ground? Everybody on the planet wants a lease in Illinois for some reason. I get calls all day, every day for a lease. And I'm telling you, there is nothing left. You know, we have to do something about the $2 state. Kill $2 here, whether you're a resident or non-resident. And I just really think there's a lot of blaming going on about, like, I got a message today that was like, we got to do something to limit the amount of outfitters. And it's like, it's not one thing. It's never one thing that is the problem ever. It's not just the outfitters. It's not just the crossbows. It's not just the 9 million trail cameras that are out there that are dictating where you're hunting because the camera goes off. It's not the farmers not leaving fence rows. It's not the non-CRP, properties. That it's not one thing. It's not one thing. Is it? It never is.
It's a bunch of things.
It's a bunch of things.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of things that are, decreasing the population of whitetails or big bucks in Illinois or the Midwest or the entire country. Deer cannot survive EHD. They are getting sharp shooting, sharp shot by the DNR in the northern part of Illinois and CWD counties. And you have to understand the agenda is to lower the age class of white-tailed deer to essentially go against CWD, chronic wasting disease. And then you have EHD, not to be confused with chronic wasting disease, and that is epizootic hemorrhagic disease, which is spread by a midge. And between the two, they're decimating the whitetail population. Well, one, because CWD doesn't kill the deer. It makes it sick, which makes it susceptible to pneumonia or worms or parasites or whatever, right? And the DNR is coming in and wiping the deer out because they want all the deer dead. If they have all the deer dead, then CWD doesn't exist. So that is, in my opinion, what is happening and the details that I've read from there. And they're actively trying to sharpshoot the population down to a very small population, and then that population will breed. And then if they keep the age class down, then they keep the deer down, which goes completely against trophy hunting or big bucks at all. So the years of the big bucks of 5-year-olds, it's over. Whether people know it or not, it's over. Whether you're in Kansas, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, whatever. Well, Texas is a different game. You can put a fence up and grow as many as you want. In Illinois, in Iowa, in whatever, the game that we knew how it was played back in the 90s and the 80s and it's over. There's never going to be the glory days. They're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. Kind of like baseball. Giant contract. What was that contract
Oh
that
my
Soto
goodness.
just got?
Yeah, the largest ever. It's like 700 some million.
Come
It's like coming up on a billion.
Make baseball great
That's
again.
crazy.
Dude.
Hey.
If I got professional baseball players, and I'm sure that the friends that would love these giant contracts. But, if there was some kind of cap, I think baseball would be different. But I don't know. It's not one thing.
Sure.
It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
It's not just the money. It's not just It's not one thing.
Hey, man, so my alarm is going off for
Okay,
a
go
pie.
get the pie.
So I know you're fired up, which is awesome. Maybe we take a wake-up call, and then I'll go grab the pie.
Yep, that'll, and then I'll go on my 10-minute rant like I normally do. After the wake-up call is brought to you by Drink Coffee, Shoot Deer, Hunting Day Coffee. This one's still for Christmas. This is the Nativity Star Roast Peppermint Mocha. Check them out, and my favorite, which is Bow Hunter, the Bow Hunter. Hit us with our wake-up call, Hunting Day Coffee.
Wake up.
Hey, Chris, love what you're doing with the show. My name's Nick. My wife and I have 74 acres in eastern Ohio, and I am trying to build some top-tier bedding on our property. So with it being eastern Ohio, it is hill country. We have some south-facing, some north-facing, and we are in land of the corn piles, unfortunately. So we have tons of people baiting around us, and I've kind of decided that the lowest hole in the bucket is going to end up being really high-quality bedding. There's some very poor timber practices around us, so poor woods management, and I think having some really high quality bedding is going to be the best route to be able to hold some more mature bucks on our property. So I'm looking for some information regarding height as far as topography goes. If you like north side, south side, off points, points and going into bowls. What do I need to do to make the best bedding I can make? So I appreciate your time. Thanks. Bye.
Number one, flow. Number one's always flow, guys. Doesn't matter. Where are these deer headed to? Whether we're talking about big timber, we're talking about, we're eastern Ohio, up and down the hills, the big points, the big ridges, the thickets in the bottom. A lot of times out that way, you've got power lines that are normally cutovers. That have the multiflora rows and have some of the new growth, and every 3 or 4 years they cut it, but they seem to have really good habitat where there's power lines running up and down these big, rolling hill semi-mountains in Ohio. I think you're in the same stage I am with the timber stuff. So number one is flow. Where are the deer flowing to? I talk about this in consults, boots on the ground, when I walk Ohio and Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Kentucky. Where are we flowing to? Where are the main concentration of deer? That goes back to 365 days a year. Where are we seeing them? What do they like? Are we writing down? Really, a lot of this I'm going to push you back to, are we writing down where we're seeing deer, when we're seeing them and encountering them? Year like this year, not a big feed year, bait pile or not, corn pile or not, doesn't really matter. You're looking at browse. You're looking at browse stuff. You're looking at acorns. You're looking at, is that a red oak? Is that a black oak? Is that a pin oak? A pin oak being a white oak. Where are you concentrating on what timber, and where is it spiked? Where is it spiked to kind of generate more white oaks? Like, are you looking for a massed crop? Are you looking for a massed crop of acorns, or are you looking at browse? So start identifying what they're browsing on. New growth, green briars, multiflora rows, invasive plants. Start circling those areas. So a couple different things happen. When you open up the canopy of timber, you're letting the sunlight in. Now, what's that sunlight going to produce, I think, is where it comes down. Is that sunlight producing invasive plants like Illinois, like your honeysuckle and your what do I call it? Russian olive and autumn olive. These are if you guys don't know, across the country here, we have these little green leaves, these little red berries, and they're invasive plants. Deer feed on those like crazy. It's great for them. If you want to hold a bunch of deer, the thicker that stuff is, the better to hold little critters and deer. But once those leaves fall off, it's really a wasteland. What am I looking at? I'm in the same boat as you. I go back to this saying I always say, which is like, match the hatch. Right now, north side of my property is an old pasture piece of ground. Got multiflora rows, got some locust trees in there, got some other little skanky trees or whatever, but it's just full of multiflora rows. For 2024 is kind of the year the white-tailed deer turned into a cottontail rabbit. And they are spending a lot of time in multiflora rows, green briars, little thickets of more of that low to the ground. You got to get on your hands and knees to crawl through. That's what the deer have been in 2024 because they've been surviving on the browse. So I think we go back to, how do we find a way to make more of that? That's it. I mean, to me, I'm thinking in the same boat as you. How do we make more of that old pasture looking ground with those multiflora roses and new generation year to 3-year-old little trees, little oaks, little bushes, little branched off stuff, and then get rid of the invasives out of there? We have, me, I'm trying to circle. Oh, we got pie.
Oh, man.
Oh, my gosh. Look at this beautiful little oh, my gosh. It looks like a cobbler, dude. Oh, that just smells incredible. I have to put away my little book here. So what we're going to do is we're going to think, how do we create the look we want to look? Where do we want those deer to settle, right? So you're talking about topography, and you're also talking about points, and you're talking about sides of hills. First things first, how do we create multiflora rows, greenbriers? Are we transplanting them to little areas? Are we cutting down the mast crops? We have to decide if we want mast crops, which is acorns and some type of nuts, or do we want browse? That's it. That's what it comes down to. And then if we create and we manage for those multiflora rows and the greenbriers, that's what I'm picking. So I'm taking my timber from this big open timber that I can see all the way through. I can see 300 yards through this one section of 35-acre timber. And I'm going to go in there, and I'm actually going to throw out this gauntlet challenge right here. I've got some real good friends in Ohio there, Madison, and, I got Bobby Kendall that does a lot with trees, and I've got Larry Lake, and I've got all these guys from all over the country. I've got my buddy in Iowa that's a tree man. And listen, I don't want just a logger. I don't want just a logger to pull the trees. But I do think that when you're talking about having bad timber management, the greatest thing that you could ever do to hold whitetails is to take an acre at a time and completely clear cut it. Don't do it all at the same time. Don't make it look like a bomb went off. But if you can go and you can just take an acre, clear cut it, get all the timber off of it, maybe some tree tops or whatever, and let it completely regen, that's going to be the number one thing for about a 7-year period. For deer to just never leave it. Make a bedroom, make a kitchen, make a garage, a man cave in there for those deer, and they won't leave it except to hopefully come out and search for food plots. So be strategic with the wind. Be easy for me to say. Strategic for the deer to want to, walk through your trap when they go downwind of these thickets. Myself personally, the gauntlet that I'm throwing out is between Larry Lake and Bobby Kendall and all my tree friends. I want to collectively in February and March on my property go in and create 4 different diverse sections of this big hardwoods, mast crop, black oaks, white oaks, red oaks, hickories, and that's pretty much what's in there. You can see all the way through it. And I am going to actively go after this exact question on what strategy are we going to create the best bedding? And we are going to sector off acre. And each one of my buddies that's better at trees than me, like I know what I want to match the hatch, right? I know what I want, greenbriers and multiflora rows and new generation in this clear cut. I'm going to take a section of it. I'm going to clear cut it. I'm going to take the next section over and I'm going to say, okay, what trees do you want to pull out of here? Let's pull out everything but the big oaks and then let the sunlight hit the ground. Let's go over here and pull out everything that is oaks and then let the scrubby stuff grow up that nothing's in there. I'm going to go in and hinge cut, which I don't necessarily for bedding think hinge cut's the best, but it does create some tops on the ground with some other stuff. And I'm going to go through in about 5 or 6 different sectors, and I'm going to implore all of these other guys that are further down the road on the tree game than me. It's where I call them in for consults. I call them in for their expertise, and I'm a big enough man to say these guys know how to cut, and I'm going to utilize all their different ways that they do it. Bobby's probably going to come in and move the treetops to where strategically creating these things where they pinch down around. I don't need to hunt them in this timber. I want to be able to set cameras in there and see which one they prefer and how they browse and how long it takes to get perfect and then kind of rate them. I don't think anybody's documenting that on a controlled property like mine. So to answer your question really easy, I like to put levels of some type of thermal cover, treetops, and clear cutting is number one. How can I clear cut and get the multiflora rows and back? And I'm going to put them off of a point. Off of these points in Ohio seem to be the best to me. These points, they run across the top, they downwind them 3/4. And if I can have these, let's say if I can have these in a perfect world, I would take the east to west points that go out to the west, and I would thicken those up however I could, dropping trees, just completely TSI. Essentially that's what we're doing, timber stand improvement, but I want to use different strategies on my place. I would do that same thing. I would TSI everything on these points and then bring those bad boys to the east on the tops to food plots. And that's how I would do it in Ohio. It's kind of a long ways around, but I think very efficient in the way that I am going to TSI my open timber, and I'm going to experiment. So I will have better and more intel going into the future, because I really want to put some of these practices in place TSI wise, and then be able to compare them with cameras and intel as we go in the future to everything I do with my land life and stuff.
Okay.
That's my answer.
All
How's
right.
the pie?
Okay, so we're going to have to talk about this because it's amazing. So it's kind of like this deep apple pie, but then they almost put like a sugared cookie type crust over the top of it. Like the top is like this.
So it arrived in a box, 8-inch pie, very deep dishy.
Yes.
And it was in looks almost wax papery.
Yeah, like a brown paper bag.
With the top cut out.
Like a thick paper bag.
Already cooked. Shout out to Brian Newman that sent it to us. You shoved it in the oven. You set it at 300 something degrees,
325, right? So real low, yeah.
For 50 something minutes.
Yeah, basically I did like 50 minutes. So basically an hour, long enough to be warm. It's probably not super hot anymore.
I like it like that. I don't like to burn my mouth. I like to get the taste.
Yeah. And so there's like different textures. You got like the soft apple, you got the crust, you got the top that's kind of more crunchy.
I can smell like a Granny Smith apple to
this. I mean, so
you think there's different apples?
So why don't you tell me, that's a good question. Why don't you tell me what you're tasting, what you think, and also for the listeners who are not able to see this, but you can check us out, go to brackettShow.com or go to YouTube. You can watch this. Okay, what do you think?
I think they're Granny Smiths. I think they're a really kind of a tart apple. I'm going to go for the second little apple here.
Yum.
And I think it's a cross between an apple cobbler.
Oh, yeah.
An apple cobbler and a Dutch apple pie.
Yeah, kind of, so there's like these little pieces that are like real crunchy, like
makes me feel like
a cookie almost.
This is my mom. This is like my mom's. My mom would love this. My mom's favorite was a Dutch apple pie, which is a little deeper dish, kind of like this is.
Yeah, it's really good. And yeah, the apples are really good. There's a lot of cinnamon in there. It's nice and sweet, but it's got a little bit of tartness to it. Thinking, I don't know if it's in there, but like almost, you mentioned Granny Smith or like a Pink Lady or something like that.
Good cinnamon flavor.
Yeah.
Good cinnamon flavor. The apples are not mushy, which normally when a warmed up pie,
especially,
it would be mushy.
Yeah, because we had to like rewarm it. Okay, so we're going to keep eating this. I'm going to play another question so we can kind of eat in peace for a minute, and then we'll get into it. But it's delicious. Thanks again for sending the pie. I'm
going to say on apple pie score, do a Dave Portnoy pizza review here.
Yeah. Oh, we start doing pie reviews?
Pie, I'm in. Pie reviews.
And honestly, it could be pizza pie or fruit pie or cream pie, whatever.
I would give this, from not having my wife cook it or my mother-in-law cook it or bake it, or my Aunt Sis or my Aunt Margie bake it and eat it right out of the oven, for a mail-in, baked-in, warmed-up pie, apple, 8.3.
Okay. Yeah, that's a solid score. Yeah.
It's high.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing.
It's getting better, by the way, as I eat it.
It is very good. Sorry, it's like went down the wrong way.
You're not
very
a professional eater. You can definitely tell I'm bigger than you. I'm a professional eater. I don't choke on my food.
Well, I was just so excited that it went down the wrong pipe. But I was going to say, this is 100% just someone decided to send it. There's no association whatsoever, but very, very good.
They might not even like hunting.
They maybe not.
But they probably grow their own apples, so they would like the land life side of things.
Oh, I think so. So, I mean, if
it's getting better as I eat it.
If by chance the Elegant Farmer, like that farm orchard, if they're out watching,
send them.
We love it. So thank you. It's amazing.
We'll put you on the website.
Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable, dude. This getting better. More cinnamony as I get into the middle. On the outside, cookie little crust, like you were saying.
The cookie part is pretty amazing.
8.5, 8.3.
Okay. All right. Let's play a question while we keep eating.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, it's Ted. I'm an out-of-state landowner. I've got 80 acres in Wayne County, Illinois, and it's great. It lays great. It's got a bunch of Russian olives for bedding, and then it's got a bunch of trash trees on the other side. But here's my question. Two questions actually. So my property taxes went up 300%, and as a result,
Illinois, baby.
I'm going to get a forestry program plan. And I've already done that. The plan's come back, and I've talked to the forester and the Illinois DNR guy, and essentially they're going to spray the invasives. They're going to do heavy TSI, which will improve. I'm okay with the TSI. One of my questions is if they just spray my Russian olives with herbicides. I've got some cedars too, and some really thick areas that the deer love. You know, how's that going to impact the bedding? They're going to die, or the invasives will die, but they're not going to remove them, so they're just going to be dead Russian olives. So what's likely to grow back is probably Russian olives. You know, which I guess is fine, but you know that's kind of the question. Do we just leave it alone, leave them dead? Will it still provide some decent bedding until some other things grow up? Question one. Question number two is, how is this forestry plan going to impact the value of the property? Knowing that this is not for board feet, this is really for wildlife habitat and improvement of the whitetail habitat in particular. So if I was going to list that property, would one want to list it before all this work takes place, or somewhere down the road, or while it's going on? So give me some sense of what your thoughts are with that. I know you've made some comments before about these forestry plans and how you want to make sure they understand this is not for board feed, it's for wildlife habitat. So I'm really concerned. I'm really nervous. I'm probably not going to be able to be there while they're doing all this. It's a 10-year plan. You know, the DNR guy seems pretty knowledgeable, and I do think it will have great value and tremendous impact down the road. But you know, I'm concerned with the short term. So let me know. I'm interested in how to proceed. Again, nervous from Florida about my baby piece of land over here. Talk to you later.
That's a long one. There's a lot there.
Wow, he's got a really great question and concerns. It's going to take me a second to put it into words, but here's what I can tell you. We're not controlling the invasives. I got a buddy, Mike Bowley. I've got, one of my other friends, Jeff Ferrara. I know they listen. I know they can give me their 411. They're 3 and 4 years into their invasive killing program to get their taxes down. Very fortunate. One side of my farm does not have invasives, maybe a couple of them there. I have another part of my farm that's getting thicker and thicker. I'll bet you can guess where the deer were this year, and where
Where it's thick?
Yeah, well, where the invasives are.
Oh, sure.
Because it's so thick, right?
Yeah.
So if you've never experienced, there's a lot of people that have no idea what we're talking about listening all over the country. If you come to Illinois, you can drive around and everyone's yard, everywhere that a bird poops, literally right now, my car outside in the studio, my truck at home are covered with red buried bird crap everywhere from the starlings. Do you have them?
Well, we keep
In
our
the city?
I don't know if we get that a whole lot. I mean, we get birds doing their business on our vehicles.
So there's thousands of starlings right now and blackbirds.
Yeah, we're getting the little blackbirds. We do. They fill the trees.
They fill
along
the
sidewalk
trees,
and
whatever, and then that's when they drop all the doo-doo that has the seeds in there because they're eating the red berries.
Have you been downtown this time of year? It's like all the trees. It looks like the leaves are still on, and it's just birds.
Because of the birds.
Yes.
Okay, so that is what's happening with the migration. So if people said, well, how 10 years ago it was all multiflora rose, it wasn't the honeysuckle and the Russian olive and the autumn olive. And then people go like, how in 10 years did it take over everything? Here's why. The birds come through. They land in all these trees. They got little red berries that have little seeds in them. All the birds eat all the red berries. They fly all through the city. They go downtown. They migrate. They go wherever. And they're carrying these seeds in their digestive tract. And it's actually stratifying a lot of the seeds through their gut health, through their gut. And then they're pooping them out on cars. The cars are traveling across the country. Most people don't think of it like that, right? They don't think of how they get transferred. Birds are the number one transfer of fish, eggs, aquatic, zebra mussels and all these weird things you don't think of. These birds are transfer them all over. So the birds are the ones that are taking a beautiful piece of timber and then spreading these all over. And then the state comes in, and what's happening in Illinois? If you don't know what's happening, gosh, I hope the government isn't vindictive to this, me explaining the truth, but we know how it can be. So a lot of the properties that we buy are rec ground, but also not only the rec ground, but you don't have to be a smart farmer. You can fight a lot of these things. So this guy probably has more timber than he has tillable. We have a lot of tillable. They can be in Christmas trees. They can be in miscanthus plants, which is an ornamental, which you can then take out and sell. If this is your business, if this is your business plan, all you would have to do if you turned your farm into bedding and switchgrass and big blue and little blue, you have to think outside the box. I don't care if you have to hire a lawyer. Just because I grow switchgrass and miscanthus and Christmas trees and corn and beans and sunflower or whatever, as long as I am somehow harvesting a certain percentage of that, okay, I'm still a farmer. Now, I don't care that the state comes and tells me, well, you're not using that. That's for deer. That's for recreation. That's for wildlife. Not necessarily, man. If you're saying that I need to pick this corn, put it in gunny sacks or some type of satchel or buckets or whatever, and I need to go sell it down at Kelly Seed to them to sell for people to buy to put to eat squirrel food, that's okay. That's a farming practice. I think that we need to stand up to these county agencies and the state of Illinois and the fact that they're coming in and saying, Chris, you bought a piece of property, and because you want to have recreational enjoyment on this property, and I am saying that because you bought it and you're from Florida, and like this gentleman, and you bought it from a guy that his family had it for 100 years and they farmed it, his taxes were $300. Your taxes are now $8,000 for that same piece of ground. 1 year apart because they reevaluate it and they know that you're coming from Florida to use it to shoot deer on.
So it's recreational,
ride four-wheelers, whatever. And so if you don't know that this is happening in Illinois. Do you know how hard that is for a real estate agent or a broker like myself to look at these properties and say, well, how much is this tax? And it's like, oh, well, you're from Florida. Let me tax the crap out of you. And that's what's happening. And so then the state has a backup program that says, oh, well, there's no way that you're going to fight this, and there's no way that we're going to allow you to do this. We're going to still keep your, he said over 300%. Did he say 300 or 3,000? It's a lot more. He was saying
eating
a lot
pie.
more.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was a lot more.
I was distracted.
So what's happening is his taxes are skyrocketing because he's using it for deer hunting. That's what's happening. They're targeting people out of state to do this. That's what they're doing. Targeting people like me that live on the property, that the property is in the same use I'm just not getting 200 bushel per acre. I'm getting whatever's left after the deer eat it. Nobody said that I have to only harvest my corn in October. They can kiss my butt if they think that I can't do what I want in this country and go harvest what's left of it in March. I didn't. Like, who are they to govern that? You know, if they say they're the state of Illinois and they're going to do, that's not okay. There are still rights that we have, and now that I'm a little bit mad about that situation, it's happening, and it's being, and we should be able to do something about it. This goes back to why I voted what I voted. It goes back. I told you I have one rule. Everybody like, well, did you vote for Trump or you voted for that? I don't think there's any question. Why did I do that? I'm going to vote for the president and the government that allows me to have my freedom on my own land. Like me and Chris had a discussion about, when we were in the election. This goes back to that. One, I should be able to prosecute or defend my own land, number one. Number two, do not tax me on what I do with my land, whether I grow corn, beans, fish, trees, or I just want to ride four-wheelers on it. It should not matter. It should not matter. It should be fair and allow me to have my freedom. Allow me to be an American and have that. And that's what my number one thing is with my vote will always be. Let me have the right to have my freedom on my land that I bought, that I pay for, and that I pay taxes for. Don't jack up my taxes to try to make me sell that land. And don't tax somebody from out of state that you're saying, well, this person's coming here to do that. So for me, it comes down to one thing when I voted, and it's my freedom on my land to collect my rainwater, grow my fish, raise a family if I choose to. And the other stuff doesn't matter to me. It just comes down to one particular vote. So now that they're in place, and now that he's got this tax bill, and now that he's signed up for this invasive removal of plants and invasive plants on his property, I do know that I have seen some really good crews come in and remove the invasive plants by hacking and squirting and spraying chemicals and things like that. I don't have enough intel without asking Jeff and Mike and some of my other people that have signed up for these programs to bring down their taxes and work in this 10-year plan. One, I guess if you're listening and you're getting smoked with taxes because it's a rec ground, there are programs like this. Chris, this is the problem. It goes hand in hand. It's like, okay, well, sit down and shut up and take your tax increase. But we're your friend. We've got this program you can get into that'll lower your taxes. It's like, but you got to spend money with us, or you got to do it's kind of back end. It's kind of backwards, and it's a little messed up with how they're doing it, because now you got to hire this agency, or you hire these people, or I guess you can do it yourself, but there's you put diesel with Tordon or Roundup or Liberty or whatever, and you're hacking and squirting and spraying these plants. But the problem is, by the time they get into the hack and the squirt and going through and, doing these millions of invasive plants in your property, once they do that, what's happening to them? He's saying, well, they just stay there and they then you got to go out and pluck them. Either way, there's millions of red berries and millions of birds that are spreading these seeds all over. So then the next year they come back in, or 3-4 years later, or whatever, and you're fighting the same plants again and again. It's a never ending cycle. And I don't think there's a good answer. My friend Ernie, he goes in with this big, if you're not watching, I'm doing this scissor thing with my hands, and they go in with a skid steer and they grab the roots and they pop all these plants. Every time that he grabbed and popped that invasive plant out of the ground, it literally planted millions of these little red berries in the ground that are seeds. So it's just spreading. How do you keep control of that? I don't think there's a good way to keep control of the invasive. So the answer to the question of, do I sell it? Do you call me and say, hey, Chris, I want your Illinois real estate, you're a licensed broker for buying and selling. Hey, would you list my property? Now, I think it's a individual thing, where you're at, how big your property is. Can you clear cut the property? Can you log it? To me, it goes back to the question before this from Ohio, which is like, do you take out the big trees? Do you clear cut the whole thing? And do you then go back in with a tree planting program where you're planting the species you want to, these white oaks and these walnuts or these chestnuts or whatever? I think the most important answer I could give you is making the timber pretty is not necessarily the best for wildlife. If you it's a double-edged sword. If you have all the honeysuckle and you have all the Russian olive and the autumn olive and everything there, you're going to have lots of deer up until late season. And then once the leaves fall, those deer aren't in those. Those deer are in the briars and in the thermal cover. It's not good thermal cover, so it's really detrimental to the whitetail herd. It keeps a great place for them to hide and eat till now when it gets late season, and then they go to thermal cover and thickets and topography changes and things like that. So what I got to say is I don't know enough about the program to say, okay, well, if we're going to take out all these invasives and we're going to pay all this money to control these invasives, and you're going to lower my taxes and I'm going to do what you want. Now I have to be in my timber and now I have to kick my deer out while I'm in there. And what does that look like? I think that I would strategically clear cut areas where I could regrow multiflora rose, even though there's a rose disease that's killing the multiflora rose. Because when I was a kid, there was multiflora rose everywhere, and that's where the deer want to live. How do I go in certain locations that I have this big open timber that now doesn't have invasives, but it's got the bigger trees? That's normally what you're looking at when you remove the invasives. How do I go into a sector that has, let's say, 5, if I broke it down into 5 acres, how can I take 2 acres out of that 5 acres and make it clear cut and thick? And if I did that every 5 acres that I had, 2 acres of it was completely clear cut, new generation growth, especially that's not invasive, and you had 3 acres that was open timber with no invasives, I think you would have more deer than if your whole place was invasive and you paid the higher taxes. So if you're already going in there controlling the invasives anyways, I would go in and strategically clear cut zones and areas to get new growth. And that's my answer.
All right. Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, there's a long question too. Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough answer, tough questions. Good thing I had great pie to go with it to fire me up. But it's really sucky that people are being targeted. I know for a fact there are counties. I'm not going to mention the counties because I don't need anybody targeting me, but I know that there are counties right now that as a general consensus as a out-of-state landowner, they are being 100% targeted by people in the counties to raise those taxes on those out-of-state landowners. And I know it's not fair. I don't know what the heck we can do about it. I know it's happening. We just had this discussion with all these out-of-state guys. They're like, my taxes are increasing so much. They're tripling, and they're 300%. I think that's what he said. I think he said 300% what they were, and they're going. They're skyrocketing. I don't know. I don't know the way around it. I'm not a tax guy. There has to be some experts out there. Now, I can tell you this. I got a buddy, Madison, that I've actually had on my farms. He's out of Ohio, and for a living as like a 3rd generation logger, he can come give you, I can reach out to me or whatever, and we can probably get you his number. But he can come give you a full evaluation on your timber, standing timber on your property, and then that property either in purchase, right? So pre-purchase or after purchase, but normally you want to do it pre-purchase. You can go on and he can tell you what the board square foot and how much this walnut and this white oak and this firewood, he can go in to that entire block of timber and he can give you a breakdown of the trees on it, and they can be personal property then. So personal property is not the real estate or the dirt that you're on, but it is the non-attached things or whatever, Chris, that are in your yard or on your property, right? Firewood or whatever. That's personal property on this real estate piece of ground, right?
Sure.
And so he's going in and saying, like, this book is sitting on this desk. This desk is $200,000, and this book and this tree 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 that's sitting on this desk, those are worth $100,000, right? And so he's able to write this for you, and you can take this personal property of these trees and separate them from the property that's sitting there. You understand? So you were taxed on the property. So I'm backdooring this question a little bit. My friend from Florida here that just called us, okay? His property is worth one price, his timber as a commodity and as a piece of personal property. Each one of those trees is a piece of personal property. They should be taxed different. So if he was to call somebody like Madison, this is next level stuff, but, and again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax guy. But the way it was explained to me was, in my opinion, from understanding this, Madison explained it to me that all these trees are personal property, and they can be evaluated differently, and the property now, the value goes down. So now our friend from Florida...
So your piece of real estate is worth less.
Yeah, your real estate actually is worth less, which means it should be taxed less. Do you understand that?
Yeah, because you're not, like, your house isn't taxed on the items you have in it, your personal items. So if you got...
Because you have fancy curtains in your house, which is all your walnuts and your chandelier and your whatever, that's personal property, right? And so that's what I'm saying is that there are companies out there, and guys like Madison are bad to the bone at what they do, that you can go back into that assessor and say, hey, listen, man, if I cut every tree off here, these personal properties, this $200,000 worth of trees and rocks and topsoil and all of this is worth $200,000. Now my property is only worth $300,000, but you guys evaluated it at, $500,000, and I'm being taxed on the $500,000. Fine. Let me get rid of my trees. Let me put them as personal property, and they're separated by a logging professional like Madison. And then, now reevaluate me on my dirt. Because if not, I'll just take all my trees and I'll sell all my trees. It's just dirt. Now, what am I going to do with that? I can spray it all. And so if they're going to be smart butts about it, you got to be smart butts about it and hire the right people, because you can combat it. That's what I got to say about that.
All right. Well, I know this episode, we haven't talked a ton about whitetail. We've talked about...
Well, we're on the dark side of the moon.
We talked about land, and then the third part being life. So here's a question kind of related more to life.
This is Steven from West Virginia. I'm 25 years old, and my dad's a little bit older. We don't really relate, and I'm dealing with like quite a few addictions with gambling and drinking, like on the verge, mostly gambling addiction, drinking addiction. And I'm trying to figure out really like what are the right step forwards to get out of, addiction, and put my face forward towards religion. Or I'm not a very religious person. My parents divorced, a little bit Christian, like I believe in a higher power, and I just don't know quite how to deal with addiction. I love deer hunting, addicted to it, but sometimes gambling and drinking overtake it. I'm just looking forward on how to,
Big brother advice.
Become more responsible and give myself forward with a higher power, or be able to have more responsibility So don't really have much of a father figure. He's a lot too much of an age gap. So just looking for some advice. Not really saying I see you as a father figure, but do see you as a figure that I watch, and just looking for some advice. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you that that's the reason we do the show. One phone call a year. Like, why'd I come in today? You know, Chris said we had a phone call that probably needed to be addressed, and what I got to say about that is, it doesn't matter who your dad is on this earth. It doesn't matter. Mine's gone. When mine was here, he was rough. He loved me, but his love is and was good and rough and abusive at times, and alcohol. And I can tell you that there is someone, not just, religion or a father figure. You don't need any of us, man. We're just here to go, hey, this is where to be. This is what to do. And this is how to find it. And it's about hitting your knees, and it's about sacrifice. So the coolest part, man, big goosebumps and love for the fact that you took a moment of sacrifice and surrender and to be open.
Yeah, really vulnerable.
That's it. Like, dude, that's number one. Like, you didn't do it out of desperation of suicide or that you're at the end or whatever. You're just like, I don't feel like I fit in. I don't feel like where I'm supposed to be. I feel like there's more. I feel like there's probably something more out there. I feel like that's kind of the place where a lot of rough guys like me come from. Me and Chris differ a little bit in that because he always grew up in it and I didn't, so I might relate to this guy a little more, but Chris will probably have a little more to say and look up because he knew this question was coming. So what I can say is the vulnerability, man, to say, like alcohol a little too much, like gamble a little bit too much. I like to, do this. I like to do that. Probably women, probably generational sin. Your dad probably doesn't know all this stuff. It's not really an age gap. It's a fact that I'm going to give you just a little bit right here. Ready? Your dad doesn't know what he's doing. Now listen, all you guys have dad issues out there, all of us, right? All of us. Your dad has no clue what he's doing, dude. Now that's not to disrespect your father. That is to say, your dad's just a guy here too, man. Your dad's dealing with the same stuff that you're dealing with. He's dealing with the same sin, maybe packaged different. Your dad's dealing with the same, getting old, beard's turning white, can't get up in the morning, peeing twice as many times. I'm talking guy stuff, right? Your dad doesn't know, man. Your dad had a child, and he had 18 years that he had to be responsible for you, and he was winging it. He didn't have a Dr. Spock book, but there is one book. And if generational sin if he would have been able to lead you, that is his responsibility, is to lead you. But sometimes he can only do what he can do, and sometimes us buttheads can't listen. We're not ready to listen. We're not ready to listen till I'm going to guess this guy's in his 20s. He didn't say, did he?
25, I think he
25, said. Yeah, man. You're in a place where you're questioning everything. I don't know, married, girlfriend, broken relationships, kids, no kids, married, dude, you have no idea what you're doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. Chris has more of an idea than me, but I still, at 47 years on this earth and fulfilled every dream that I ever dreamed, none of them mean anything compared to when I realized that, one, Jesus was real and that he died for my sins, and that the gospel and the only book that I needed to follow and the only understanding that I needed to have was to sacrifice and take that next step. First step's like that vulnerability, knowing something's wrong where you're at, and then being still in it and saying, all right, where do I turn? Well, I'm going to ask somebody that I look up to, right? So that's okay to look up to me, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. I'm big brother, Uncle Bubby, and so you're asking. So I'm just saying, the people that you think have an idea of what they're doing, have no idea what they're doing. If they don't have the word, they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we're doing as humans. But we do have an instruction booklet of a love that's unimaginable, that has everything worked out. That the minute that you were driving, probably making this call, when you realize that this isn't your home, that minute, that aha moment that realizes this isn't my home, and there is someone out there that loves me, and he created me, and all he asks us to do is does Jesus have your heart? That's it. Like, simply, does he have your heart? And do you have to give up gambling or give up drinking to love him and let him in your heart and have him be your personal savior? No. You can love him and surrender to him, and he will change the desires of your heart that you don't even know how those changes happen. Guess what? You don't need to know how those changes happen. That's where the Holy Spirit comes in. And then you go, well, I don't know about this molecule, chlorophyll, borophyll stuff and the Bible and whatever. Man, all you got to do is be open to hearing it, and the word will come. And the word will come in what way, Chris? Like, what way? Yeah. Like, people met, like, I prayed. I'll tell you this real quick and then hit me with what you think. Like, understand that you're taking the first step going, I wish men would come into my life. So pray this prayer tonight. If you, wherever you're at today or whatever, and you're listening to this, maybe you're in the same place as our guy, and you just sit here at your desk, just shut her down for a moment. Put your phone away. Have a little piece of apple pie, whatever you got, coffee, whatever, hang out. For a moment, just be quiet, be still. This guy's a hunter, right? So we've talked about this, being in the tree, being alone with your thoughts. So God's probably been working on him a little bit in that. And so when you're there, man, just say like, Lord, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you're there. I don't know this Jesus thing. I don't know this Yahweh thing. I don't know this stuff, but Lord, I'm open. I'm ready to hear it. I'm ready for a change. I'm ready to have men come into my life. Lord, I'm going to pray right now and just say, I'm praying, Lord, for men to come into my life to advise me, to change my way of thinking by just being alongside of me, just iron sharpening iron, and men acting like men. That's what we're supposed to do. A lot of times we lose that in masculinity in men or whatever, but there's a sacrifice that happens when just humbly you say, listen, man, I like to drink too much. I like chicks. I like gambling. Don't we all? I mean, don't we all, as sinful hearts, as black hearts? I think so many people say, well, I'm a good person. I have a good heart. Now you have a black heart and you're a horrible person, and it's only through your Savior that you can even begin to feel even okay. I mean, is that the word? It's just okay. Like sometimes, man, that's all I can manage is I'm just okay. Even today coming in here, I was like, Chris, having a rough time in my marriage, marriage is hard. It's a sacrifice. It is the sanctity of marriage, which is the greatest, what is it? The greatest, where you just, it's an example. Why am I missing this word?
Like
witness.
Illustration
it's
or
just
witness.
Like your witness.
Sure.
I mean, your marriage and taking two flawed people and sinful people, putting them together and going, okay, do life together. If you don't have this common thing in the Lord and what the word says and whatever, that's, you just, you don't have that sacrifice. So I think he's there where he's asking these questions, and then that's when Holy Spirit really works. But also you open yourself up, because why would the devil fight why would evil be in your world and more sin? So this is a sketchy time where you start surrendering to the Lord and you start talking to the Lord. All of a sudden, man, you'll feel like, why is the devil attacking me more than ever? Because now he wants you, man. You're on the right track. So what do we have biblically where you can tell?
Yeah.
Because it's simple for me to say, broken man, sinful generation after generation after generation, all this sin, whatever, do, grab, whatever. This isn't my home. And the Lord and the Bible and the gospel, it's true. It's real.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be real easy for me to try to wax eloquently or speak, with some sort of wisdom. But I always try to turn to the Word of God and what that says, like you were talking about.
Always.
So there were a few things that came to mind when I heard this call. I mean, I'll first say, like, there's a reason why you called.
Yep.
So, Stephen, thank you for calling. I mean, certainly for yourself, you felt that you needed to call, but there might be someone who's listening to this who is in the same place, like Chris was saying. So,
got to be bold. He's being bold.
Yeah.
Vulnerable and bold are the coolest things that we can do as men, to be bold and vulnerable.
Yeah. So for all those men out there that maybe are thinking some of the same thoughts or struggling with some of the same issues, there's a few passages that I'd like to turn you to. First of all, get yourself a Bible, and you can find them all over the place. And any part of the Bible is going to be helpful, but I would first kind of turn to the New Testament. That's after Jesus came. We kind of learn about his life, but there are some passages in there. This is in 1 Peter 5, verse 7. It says, cast all your anxieties or all your cares on him because he cares for you. And I think of the stuff that you're struggling with. The next verse, it says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So, like Chris was saying, this may lead to some more challenging times, feeling like you're under attack. But we know that God is in control. And the other thing is, trying to overcome addiction, like that can be so challenging. One of the hardest things that you face in life, because at times you feel helpless, like you can't control it. So, when I think of like what I can do on my own power versus what I can do with the power of the creator of the universe, like that's so crazy. So in Galatians 2:20, it says, I have been crucified with Christ. So when Jesus died on the cross, he bore our sins. And when I was crucified with him, it is no longer I who live, but it's Christ who lives within me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And then it says in Romans 6, we know that our old self, like we were just talking about, our old self was crucified with him, with Jesus on the cross, in order that the body of sin, the sin that we face, might be brought to nothing, so that we would no longer be enslaved to it. So you no longer have to be a slave to that addiction, because if you hand that over, someone more powerful than me, than Chris, than yourself, someone more powerful can bear that burden for you.
Somebody that created deer.
Yeah.
I mean, how
yeah.
And listen, he's probably listening where you are reading what you're reading, and now I'm going to dumb it down for us dummies, right? And this is what God put on my heart, and why I do what I do. He can tell us the scripture and where it's at. I can too. I got my favorite ones. Mine are not going to be the same as his, which is why the gospel is written the same way it is. Realize that men walked this earth when Jesus was born, right? Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Walks this earth with a bunch of dudes, and they hung out with them, and they were handpicked by Jesus. Jesus was sent here as what? Version of us, as human, right? To be written as he died. He was going to die in flesh, right? He's going to die Easter. It was all written, how it was going to be, all this that we're going through, all of this was written for this to happen. Jesus knew this, right? And as he walked through life, and as he worked with his hands, and he was perfect, and he was sinless, and he was the only person to ever be perfect, right? And then at a time when he was 33, 34.
Yeah, 33, I believe.
And if you want to go like, well, when was Jesus running around in Bethlehem and, and all this stuff, is like, picture the Romans, man. The Romans, the Colosseum, the tigers fighting the gladiators and all. Like, that was real. Jesus was outside, just not far away from all this happening. So give yourself a blue collar understanding of what's going on. This is your time frame. Guys walking around, man, and commandments from God, right? Old Testament stuff before Jesus showed up and died on the cross for sin. They used to sacrifice animals and stuff, man. And they would Passover was like you took to the synagogues and Judaism, and you took these animals and you sacrificed them and threw blood all over. It'd be like you killing deer or ducks and putting the blood over the top of your door. And, and Passover was when it would come and you would pass over because you sacrificed this. And when Jesus came, it was no more sacrifice because Jesus was going to be the sacrifice, man. For all of us now in the New Testament and the New World was like, no more this way. And at that point, that's why Jesus died for our sin. But realize that it's like a stranger. If you didn't know who I was, and big, scary, tattooed, 6'1", 270-pound dude shows up at your house, and you're not going to let me in with your kids and your wife. Right? You're not going to let me in. We don't have a relationship. You don't know me. You don't know that I don't mean harm, and I'm going to defend you with everything I got, right? So I'm speaking to a hardened man that knows that he's going to defend his friends, and he's going to fight, and he's going to do this, and he's going to go to the bar, and he's going to fight for his friends, and we all feel that fight. So if I'm walking up to your house, you're not letting me in. And the reason you're not letting me in is we don't have a relationship, and you don't know that my heart is pure and that I know that I'm going to protect your family. Right now, I'm a threat. So there's so many people that go like, well, I believe in God, right? I believe there was a Jesus, but he doesn't have your heart. So I think the biggest thing is that you have to have a relationship with him. And when you have a relationship with him and Jesus has your heart, he's going to let you into his kingdom, right? Because the only way to heaven is sacrifice and accepting Jesus into your heart. And so you can accept him into your heart and have progressive sanctification where you start giving up these sinful behaviors and you break generational sin. And realize that Jesus walked this earth with the disciples that are doing exactly what we're doing here, which is just telling you about a love, telling you about a human being that Yahweh sent here on earth to be in how would you say it? In our likeness, or be human so we can associate, right? And then he
experienced, it says that, he experienced basically everything that we've experienced, all the same temptations, all the same pain, all the same anger, but he was not overcome by it.
Mm-hmm. And then, so then you have that. So then you go, well, I can't associate with Jesus. I've lived a hard life, and my dad was, generationally, and your dad ain't got to figure it out, man. He might not be saved. The whole reason for this phone call right now, you may be on a path, man, of redemption where you're saved. And just like my mom that just passed in May, she wasn't saved. She was a good person, but she wasn't saved. And so me going through everything I went through when I gave my life to Christ, and I went to my mom and said, Mom, yeah, there's a generational gap, and yeah, we were close. She was never saved. Now she's in heaven because she was absolutely saved when she passed. And she faced cancer just head on with a just unbelievable faith. And so realize that, iron sharpening iron, having men. You have all these disciples that have these different personalities. Fishermen, right? Peter, and you have Matthew, and you have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and so you had all these guys.
Tax collectors, like the people that you kind of hate from the government at times,
exactly.
Right? Like
he's
sinners
using
as well.
Their life, and so okay. So you got the disciples, you got Jesus, and all this stuff. Well, that's because I love reading Matthew. But the other ones are telling the same story. Do you realize that Matthew starts out, which is the New Testament, where it starts with lineage of the genealogy of different people and how they're related? And that's just to relate back to the Old Testament and how these people got there, and how they got there. And then all of a sudden it's like Star of Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And all of a sudden it starts telling how Jesus was born, right? Go to the next book in the Bible, same New Testament, same account. That Chris has a different personality than me. I'm going to write how I see it. Chris is going to write how he sees it. You're going to write how you see it. So all of a sudden people are like, well, there's all these books wrote by men, and how does that work? And they were all there. They were all there to disciple under Jesus and have their own account for how that worked and the Holy Spirit working in that. And they tell of the works that Jesus did and the love he's shown and how things, And it just all makes sense. And so I think the part where you started quoting is where I go back and go, I never knew when I went to church all those years when somebody would tell me, what you said, right,
Sure.
Chris?
Yeah.
I would go, well, I heard them all my life, but I did not know what the Bible meant. So I guess I'm breaking that down to say there's a bunch of dudes that walked around with Jesus, and they went on adventures where they were spreading the love of God and explaining things and how to pray and how to work through and how to conquer life and sort through it and sacrifice and how to, break bread and the fish and the thousands and how to be baptized and what baptism means. And it's just going to tell you how to live. Just tells you how to live. And for somebody that's so wrecked like me, tattoos, spiky hair, essentially addicted to sexual sin because my father loved him some Dallas cowgirls, and from 2 years old was like, those were the woo-woo girls. And I learned sex different. I learned physical lust different, and it was a common thing in my family. And my dad loved that women, and so it was generational. That's how I thought love was. And that's how I thought connection and closeness was. And boy, was I wrong. And the sooner I would have gave my life to Christ, the sooner I would have understood all that. So I tell you that never be scared of a Bible. And if you're like, well, okay, you got me. So I pull up an app every once in a while called Bible Gateway. And it's a free one. It has some ads in it and stuff, but Bible Gateway, you can go on there and they got a version where somebody like me that doesn't read, I don't read real
they
good.
got different translations. Yeah. Like you said, versions.
So I do ESV, English Standard Version, very just middle of the road. So everything was written in Hebrew, right? And then
in Greek and Hebrew.
Yeah, Greek and Hebrew. And so it was all how do you say that? Transcribed?
It was translated. Yeah.
Translated. And so some of them pretty overwhelming for a guy like me to just grab the King James version and just roll through.
Also, that was the language at the time at that
That's
point,
right.
right? Like it's not the common vernacular, the common language that we use now.
Yeah.
So
if you were going to go grab something, English Standard Version, open it up to Matthew. I think it's like Matthew 3 by the time you get kind of past the generational lineage or whatever and the genealogy, and then you just start there. So if you want any direction, that's where you go. And you just look it up, Bible Gateway, or somebody for me, like Chris does some stuff, broken men stuff, real men acting like men. I go to Pastor James McDonald. He's been through his own stuff and crap and whatever, but God definitely uses him to talk to really hardened men with addiction and things. That's his ministry. Ministry was what I was looking for. Marriage is the hardest ministry ever.
It's your first ministry right there. Yeah,
it is. And so that's where I'm going with that. What do I got to say kind of in short of addiction? Progressive sanctification. You're not getting out of this bad boy. You're not getting out of this bad boy without sin. How do you handle it? When you're struggling in relationships and job and what am I doing? Simple things, man. Here's my big ones. Guard your heart. What does that mean? Sometimes I just stay away from people. Now, I don't stay away from people, go to the bar. I stay away from people and I go, these people aren't good for me. Too many of them apple pies, not good for me. Too much of that coffee, not good for me. Too much of that alcohol, not good for me. I will have a beer. I will have me a, what was I drinking the other day? A little, what's wrong with my brain
It's
today,
okay.
Bill?
It's okay.
Ginger beer and whatever. So my point is flee temptation. Guard your heart. Guard your heart was the biggest for me because I feel like a lot of rough guys, we're trying to help other people because we can't help ourselves. So for me, it was like, I'm not going to, do these people really need my help or can God kind of help them right now? Because I got to kind of help myself, right? I got to pour into my own cup and I got to get me some fulfillment through my Creator, right? I got to get into the Word. I got to figure out what I'm doing. And sometimes you got to kind of give people up to the Lord and what they're doing. And sometimes even that push away where you just say, hey man, I kind of guard my heart right now. I'm searching this Jesus thing. Sometimes that's enough that other people are like, oh, whoa, And if you just slow the game down, that's what he really wants. Just surrender. Probably what's written right there. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. But the second part of that is sometimes, man, we got to lay next to the still water, right? Cool streams, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's all like, hey, Chris and Chris, why don't you guys take a nap and love Jesus? And other times your Father in heaven, not your Father on earth, is like, sit down, Brackett. You're being a butthead. Like, he's like, get down, sit down. So the one thing that you don't want, my friend, is to run into something to where you can't come back from it, right? And that happens in all sin. It happens in all sin, whether it's addiction, whether it's aggression, fighting, battery, tax evasion, like whatever it is, man. We were talking about taxes earlier. We were talking about, me, I'd like to punch a guy in the face at least 15 times a day. I don't do that. But I don't do that on my humanly understanding. I do that on the fact that I just go, right? What do you got to say to that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I understand.
What's your thing? What's your thing?
That I struggle with?
Yeah. Mine's sexual immorality and that whole thing. That's been in my testosterone blood since I was born.
Yeah.
Now being married to my wife that I am very attracted to, and love and sex and that attractiveness in a pure form, doing it where me and my wife, when we dated the third time after being engaged and breaking up, we took everything besides holding hands and put it in a box. And we dated for 1.5 years without touching each other, without kissing, without staying at each other's houses. And we put that away. So it's never too late. We put that away and we said, we're going to open this when we get married. And that sacrifice right there was the most powerful thing, but it took me 40-something years to learn that sacrifice and that it was never too late. And when we did that, we'll make it through our marriage. We'll make it through our marriage. We always do every day because we come back to the same thing. But if we would have done it the way we did before with lust and sexual immorality, tongue-tied today, that sacrifice. So that's an example.
Yeah.
So what was your thing?
Well, I mean,
and wanting to punch me, but just wanting to punch somebody in the face at least 100 times a day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a broken person for sure. Like everyone, I think, there's some different things that I struggle with and face. I think one of the biggest things is, and there's a lot of things that led to this, but like I find a lot of I try not to, but I find a lot of my worth in what I'm able to accomplish and what I'm able to do.
Acts and works.
Yeah. And so like for me, it's like I want people to affirm me. And so I want to do like the best of stuff to the detriment of relationships, to the detriment of like my relationship with God and spending time. I can get so fixated on work. I mean, you've seen this, that like for me, like I could work until 2 a.m. because I'm trying to get a project done and like not having a good balance. I know that sounds like kind of a weak answer, but like that can really become a problem. Like I have to I struggle with making sure like I'm a good parent, that I'm present. I want to be there for my kids. I want to be there for my wife. I want to be there for my friends. I don't want to be so prideful that like earlier, I go to the scripture because I can say stuff that I think is really wise, but it's easy for me to rely on my own strength and think like I got this figured out, or like if there's a problem, I always am like, oh, I gotta work my way out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the sort of person who would just like keep clawing until I got out instead of asking for help. And so I think that's been a real big struggle. And you talk about as far as like generational stuff. I mean, I know that like I never met him, but because my grandfather passed away, but like who dealt with addiction and alcohol and stuff like that, and had fought in the war and had a lot of demons because of that. And then like I thinking about like verbal or physical abuse, and then like my father, and I love him and we have a good relationship, but times where he's dealt with like depression and stuff, and like taking that out, even if he didn't mean to, but taking it out on his kids. And so like I want to make sure that I break those chains. And so thinking about that and dealing with my own sort of rage. So I mean there's a lot of different ways that I'm broken. I could take hours to share all those things, but I think what it always boils down to is like, who is number one, you know? And if it's me, if I'm putting myself number one or my own desires number one, that leads to all sorts of problems. It leads to addiction. It leads to poor relationships. It leads to not having a good balance in my life. And so, yeah, I mean, that's stuff I deal with every day. Every day I think about those things and like have to surrender.
We're all failing. We're all going to fail it. You're gonna freak out on the boys every once in a while to where you could have been a little bit nicer or whatever.
Oh, for sure.
Look, what are the things? Tired, hungry. Like there are things as humans that socially we go like, well, in the church, like you have these things. Like if you're tired, don't have a conversation. If you're hungry, don't have a conversation. There's a lot of stuff that's just very much common sense. Biggest common sense thing I would say to another broken younger guy that I would say, and the first thing I say, I talk to my buddy Logan all the time about it. He's rough life, rough guy, wants to be rough and just feels like I've been born rough. I'm in rough. I'm roughly rough. And I'm like, who told you that? You're not that. You're not defying a guy to, you're not like that to me. Man, you're just a pup. Like you don't have to make it rough on yourself, buddy. Like you don't have to go drink in that bar. You don't have to go be around that people. I don't know who told you that you have to be this person that you're being, because I'm talking to a younger version of me that just called, right? Who told you that you had to be who you think you are? The world did. Stop listening to the world. This isn't your home, and this isn't what the gospel wants. This isn't. You want to be a hunter? Go be a hunter. But if you were to get rid of those friends that gamble, you ain't gonna gamble anymore. You want to go with them friends that drink? If you don't go with them friends that drink, you just tell them no. Well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I've been friends with them since kindergarten. They're not your friends, man. They don't know what they're doing either. Why don't you lead and be the example? Walk away. Guard your heart. Walk away. Give yourself some time. Check out for a little bit. Guard your heart. Work with your hands. Idle time's the devil's time. All these things that are addictive are all because you're around people that say it's okay to be addictive. It's okay to drink. It's okay to do this. Okay. I'm not telling you not to drink, man. I'm telling you to be very clear on what you're doing. And if you can't be clear and you can't be calm and you can't be slow the game down enough to fill your heart and your soul with what's good and what's light and what's life and what is Jesus and what is this, your relationship with him, not my relationship with him to show you that this is this. All I'm supposed to do is tell you about it. I'll be happy to show you about it. I'll be happy to take this time during this show and not talk about deer and talk about life, talk about love, and talk about somebody that loves you that you unimaginably. But that's sacrifice to just go, what do I look up? Let me rest on one verse. My favorite verse is Acts 20:24, which is my friend Royce and Jordan just asked me about it. I had done everything in this world when everything was taken from me, and I turned my life to Christ and said, I want to work for you, and it was like, my life is not my own, right? And I'm going to live for Christ, essentially. I mean, that's the whole gist of Acts 20:24. And it was like, I just wanted to be a soldier for something. I just wanted to be fight for my whole life of fighting. Where Chris wanted approval, I wanted approval, but I wanted to fight. I wanted to be a martyr for what I believed in. I wanted to be a martyr for a tattooed, big dude that lived blue collar in America and kill deer and drive big trucks and fight for this country and fight for stand up. My guess is you feel like me, where you want to stand up for everything that you think is an injustice. And I'm telling you right now that I already know who wins. Do you know who wins?
He already won.
He already won, man. It's already been decided, So I just feel like I'm talking to a lot of guys out there that are me younger and just go, I don't know who told you that you had to go to your families for Thanksgiving, because maybe you're working through some things because, let's talk about Christmas. Who told you that you had to go to Christmas with all the people that may not be healthy for you right now? Okay. That doesn't mean go being alone. That means guard your heart and be very calculated with what Christmas means to you this year. With my mom gone and my dad gone and my mother-in-law and my wife being my only immediate family, and me loving my sister and rekindling that relationship, I prayed for that for years. Having my nephews and my aunt and my brother-in-law, very small family with no children, and what's my life for, right? And so as we go into Christmas, I want you guys to not feel that you have to do this generational sin. Take it from somebody that's on the spectrum and knows that he is not normal, and it's okay. I can sit at my house all Christmas, just like I did Thanksgiving, and never leave the house because it's just another day to me. But to think about family and to think about this, but I didn't go drinking. I didn't have to do something. So realize that you're not defined by this world. Look, just slow that down. You're not defined by this world. What does that look like? What does that look like when you slow that down? I'm not defined by it. I'm not defined by the show. I'm not defined. What are we doing the show for? You think I'm doing this show to be famous? I could care about famous. I'm doing this show for what reasons, Chris? What are we doing the show for? To reach people, to use our talents with, I want to do stuff that talk about things I'm good at and experiences I've had and help people along the way. And you want to use your talents to make something cool. You've never done a show like this yet. You've done things close with your other programs and whatever.
Not a hunting show.
So this is a new adventure with a pod type show, type /. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know where the funding's coming from. We were just discussing how much to charge. We're hitting 50,000 people or 100,000 people or 1 million people. How much to charge? Are we charging this? We have no idea what we're doing. I have no idea what he's going to charge. I have no idea what I'm going to charge. I have no idea how this business is going to go. But you know what I do know? That no matter what format, whether we film it on this phone or whether we film it here in the studio, whatever it is to reach people like yourself and just say, you are not alone. And I am going to wrestle with the rest of the day on where to sit when I deer hunt. What is God? Listen, I have a big question that I have for God about whitetails and how much we make them idols and how much the addiction is and how much the comparing antler size and all this stuff. And it's a really great battle to process for somebody that likes to be intellectual when it comes to that and spiritual at the same time. And do not rely on your own understanding, a lot of it, right? He says, and don't, just find some things to grab a hold of in the dark. Just be that, let him be your rock. Let his words be your rock, where it's just like, don't rely on your own understanding. Surrender to him, put all your faith in him. And see, I don't know where they fall, but I know what the gospel says. I know what the Bible says. I know, one of the greatest stories, and hopefully we get to talk about one time, is the road to Damascus with Paul and, how he became who he was, and how when you want to wreck somebody, you take the thing they hate or love the most, and you blind them with that, the last image in their head, and then you put them in a dungeon, and you put them in somebody's house, and you're sitting there blind, and all you can see is Jesus's face, and then Jesus comes to him and changes his heart, and he goes from killing Christians like Jeffrey Dahmer, and just killing Christians and butchering them, to loving and essentially him and the Holy Spirit writing most of the New Testament, and watch redemption there. You want to talk about a rough dude with tattoos and, somebody that is bad to the bone and thinks they're cool and want to be a martyr or whatever, and you want to see somebody, you want to relate to somebody, and somebody that's probably clinically nuts back in the day, but he took somebody that these other guys that we were talking about, the other disciples were pretty meek and mild, and they were talking to the normal people and probably the neurotypical people. And then you got this other guy that's all like, kill the Christians, I'm going to go be a martyr. And then all of a sudden Jesus changed his heart after he's going after Peter. Next thing you know, he's the greatest soldier for Christ that's ever lived, really. And he's changed his entire life. And he's a bad dude. And he said, my life is not my own. And the other people were like, we can't go out into the village and preach. And he's like, watch this. And he went out there and he was like, He wasn't scared of anything. And that's when it talks about being bold. So my brother, when you're driving, you're talking about, thinking about how much you can drink and how much you can gamble and how much you can smoke and how many women you can get and what all this stuff that you want to be bold for. I challenge you to go be bold for Christ, because some of us are the best soldiers for it, man. Not every angel wears a white hat.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you for calling it. And, for everyone who's been watching and listening, like Chris was saying, we don't fully know how this is going to reach people, but we do know that we want it to have an impact. And so that's why we're doing this. That's why, I appreciate Chris being vulnerable as well and sharing from his heart. And I certainly seek to, as best that I can, to be vulnerable in who I am. And yeah, just we're all working through this together. So we thank you. And as we enter this Christmas season, now's a great time to reflect on that. Maybe it's a committing for the first time to who is this Jesus that we celebrate at Christmas. We've been talking a lot about it. Maybe you need to spend some time reading or praying to and just waiting to hear something from God, because he's there. He's always been there. Maybe you just need to take a moment to listen.
When people say, I believe in God, what do we have to kind of, give the lowdown about what, we got to talk about our white gold and our taxidermist and our lowdown, but really, as we end this up, and I know that they're in it for the long haul and understand what we're talking about here. But when you talk about God, realize that that's a creator, right? Our creator, Yahweh. And then you have Jesus. And so when you pray, you're praying to your creator, and Jesus is your savior, and there's a Trinity there, and there's a Holy Spirit that does things where he'll just change the heart like that. Supernatural. Like when you were praying earlier, you were just asking for supernatural. I mean, raising from the dead, and this is real stuff. This really happened.
Yeah.
So when don't be scared that that mental illness is real, and that spiritual warfare is real, and addictions are dance with some of both of those. And so we don't discredit that at all. And yes, everyone's going to judge, but judging isn't, it's got more depth to it. Like, I can judge and go like, Chris has got better style than me, right? His boots,
you've got more camo than I do.
Right. His boots aren't covered in blood from Joe's deer the other day, but he's got the style going on or whatever. And I can look at him and go like, oh, he's never going to wear camo. I mean, I can kind of judge like that. He's going to wear camo. But understand that our first reactions of sin are not our last reactions of sin. Like, our first judgment of things, be like, well, most of the Christians I know are so judgy. And you're like, no, dude, they're actually human. They're just the first ones that say, I'm not okay, so I'm going to go to this place, or I'm going to read this Bible, whatever. And there's a lot of people in church that ain't going to heaven. And so don't let an organization or where you're at dictate your relationship. That you got to have a relationship with him to let him for him to let you in his house. Understand that. Same with me having a relationship with you, if you'll let me in your house or not. It's no different. It's very simple. Just slow that down, accept him into your heart. And, yeah, I just love it. I love it when people ask, and that last comment when I got tore up is just that it takes all of us, man. Look what's happening. Something's been really hard with, Phil Robertson. I watched him since Duck Commander stuff way back in the day, Cut 'em Coco. Like, he was one of my first dudes I was drawn to in the outdoor industry. I'm talking about VHS tapes from the 80s, renting them from Presley's, and then watching them over and over to where I could recite every word back when they first create the Go Devil motors and whatever. And then to be in Phil's house with him and Miss Kay, and him and Jody making pralines on the stove and living in that little house there on the river, and friends with Willie and everybody. And then to now know what he's going through, and that he's in his final season of his life, and how many people he reached and whatever. And to know him, just be like, he doesn't care what happens to him on this earth. If he's got to go through this momentary affliction and this momentary pain for however long with his Alzheimer's and his health concerns or whatever, he just can't wait for the other side because he knows this isn't his home. So if he has to go through this hell on earth that he's going to be going through and that he's going through right now, and he went through this, addiction, alcohol, drugs, women, that if you've never watched The Blind, you need to watch The Blind to go through, like friends and people that I look up to go through that, and then to have to go through this momentary affliction on this earth for eternity in heaven because he has a relationship with Jesus Christ and he's a disciple of Jesus Christ. That's a big deal, man. And so to just watch that and understand that, that's a big deal. So
yeah,
should I tell them about the lowdown?
Sure, let's do it. Let's bring it back.
This is what makes it happen. The lowdown is a high-speed trail camera viewer. This helps me look at my trail cameras and separate them, and makes life really pretty cool. So these are some blessings that we have. It's a pretty much in a tablet form. It has SD cards that you put in. It's got a 9-inch screen. It's super fast. I can hook it up to an HDMI cable and then put my different cards in there and tap and save and blow up and watch videos from my trail cameras. And not only do I use cell cameras, but when I pull those SD cards, there's a lot of pictures that don't send. So I like to go through them with my lowdown. Big shout out to White Gold for everything that they've ever done for us. If you're looking for Christmas presents, order some White Gold, Clover Rush. Any hunter in your family has a place that they could be frost seeding clover. And it would be a great gift to any hunter in any place that you're listening in the country, that you could order some Clover Rush and some of the other goodies. But the Clover Rush is something that you can test your first food plot. Even if it's on the edge of a field or something, you can put this down in March and April and even February in the snow if you wanted to. And it's going to grow clover this spring, and you can just keep it mowed and you'll have a nice little plot. Even for you guys that have permission pieces, it's okay to add clover to grassy areas, and you will be able to maintain it with just a weed whacker and or some chemical, and you'll have a little goodies and morsels for the deer. And big shout out to Cantrell Taxidermy in Springfield, Illinois. If you got a trophy buck that you're looking to go get, European mounted bobcat, coyote, everything but birds, you can give Mike a call, and you can find all of these things on thebrackettshow.com, BRACKETT show.com, consults, boots on the ground. You just want to talk about deer, call in to the number 309-761-5263, 309-761-5263. Ask us any questions. It's free. I'll answer the question. Make it a good question. You got higher odds of being on the show. We got we got 2 episodes left, and we really appreciate everything. And that was a 8.3 to 8.5 pie. That was incredible.
Oh man, it was very good. So thanks for the pie as well, and for everyone heading into Christmas, enjoy Christmas.
Yeah, take some time, man. You don't what do we have to do to say? Just what would Chris and Chris do? We are going to actively try to enjoy our Christmases by just always being the one that brings down the drama. That's our job as men, is to calm the seas sometimes. So that's our challenge to you, everybody listening out there. Just all of us, just calm the seas, know the reason for the season, slow her down, enjoy those kiddos, and remember those that are gone. It's going to be rough for Christmas for me. It was a rough. Mom's birthday was the other day, and so we're just going to slow her down. And if I don't do much, I'll probably be sitting on my deck, looking out across my lake. Hopefully there's some snow, maybe some ice fishing. I got to catch my trout.
Yeah, I know you keep
maybe
talking
that'll
about
be my
it.
Christmas present.
Ooh.
Maybe I'll get some ice and catch some trout at my pond.
That sounds nice.
On Christmas.
That sounds
Either
nice.
way, I'll have a nice fire. Maybe I have to order one of these brown bag
Oh man, that's good.
apple pies.
That's
so.
good. That's good. All right, you should dress up like Santa and go ice fishing.
Ho, ho, ho.
Or an elf. I don't know.
I'm in. I'm in. We'll dress Jody up as elf.
Okay.
But she'll have to eat, what are those? The funniest part of the elf movie is when he's eating the dang He's at the doctor's
Like-
office.
Oh,
Is he eating
the cotton balls. I
balls?
thought you were gonna say like the bubble gum that he pulls off the railings in the subway and stuff.
I love sugar.
There's so many moments. That
Love
is
sugar.
good.
All right, everybody. This has been episode 23. We appreciate you. The Brackett Show, Whitetails, Land and Life.